Hi there, hi there. I must apologise for the late start today. Usually, we start at 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time here at Leadershipisation, all things leadership. But I have a new keyboard, and this is the first different keyboard I've had for about 12 years. And I pressed a button which meant that everything was magnified up to about 200 times what it actually needs to be. So we just had this crazy bit in the background where I'm running around going, how do I get it back? Which button do I push on my new keyboard? So now that I'm here, we'll take a breath and I will welcome you. Welcome to Leadershipisation, all things leadership. My name is Beth Bergen and I build influential leaders. And one way that I build influential leaders is by working with people to level up their communication skills. I'm here most Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Now, today is all about conversations. Conversations are things that we have all the time. We have them at work, we have them at home, we have them in all areas of our private life. And suddenly, a conversation is a different kind of thing. Maybe not suddenly, maybe it's been building up over a number of years as we've got more and more comfortable with texting or messaging. But suddenly, we're in a situation where all conversations seem to have devolved into or had the potential to devolve into an argument where it's almost like people are waiting to be offended, where small issues are things that people are fighting for or against, but those small things become blown out of all proportion. And as a collective, humans have become much more polarized. They're much more divided. And as a result, we're less likely to compromise. And when we're less likely to compromise, when we're waiting to be offended, we tend to pull back from those face to face conversations. We make decisions based on the things that we already believe because perhaps our mind isn't open to new ideas, to new ways of doing things. And ultimately, in amongst all of this, we're actually not listening to each other because we're texting. And texting is awesome for flirting, for grocery lists, for sharing information, but it's not okay for deep and meaningful conversations. And it sure isn't okay for arguing. These are times when we need to have a deep and meaningful conversation. And a conversation is actually a balance between the talking part and the listening part. And somewhere along the line, we've actually lost this balance. Now, technology's had a role in this. 96% of Australians use their mobile for writing text messages. And 97% of Aussies read a message within 15 minutes of it being sent. So we're all getting a bit reactive to this kind of, if there's a notification, it makes a noise. Within 15 minutes, we've generally read it. I was astounded to discover, and I'm sure this would be going out of date as we speak, but I was astounded to discover that globally, 23 billion text messages are sent per day. 23 billion text messages. So all up, most of us send or receive up to 85 messages a day. Now, I don't send that many, so someone's sending an awful lot because I've got a whole heap of mine. And apparently, the younger you are, the more you're likely to send them. And so the result of this is that there's a high level, like here's my phone here, there's a high level of the screen engagement and there's a low level of interpersonal communication, which means that that skill of having face-to-face conversations is one that we're in danger of losing. And I talk all the time from that lead about that leadership intelligence. And people don't like people. There's all sorts of people that we're going to come in contact with. People like our ideas. We don't like some people. We do like some people. We don't like some people's ideas. There are all sorts. We're all playing different roles. We're all from different cultures and different backgrounds. So when we think about face-to-face communication, there are some standard requirements. There are the standard requirements that go with every face-to-face. And I want to mention these, but that isn't what today is about. These are things like looking the person in the eye when you're talking to them, nodding and smiling and being engaging, showing interest, asking questions, paying attention. All of those things are your standard requirements for face-to-face conversation. A really great conversation is going to be helped along because you are engaged, you are inspired, you're having a real connection, and you feel and they feel as though they're being understood. Now, in order to get this really great conversation, I'm going to share some tips with you today to help you to improve this. Okay, so that's our goal. Really great conversations. We're engaged, we're inspired, there's a real connection, and we're understood. So the first one is this: no multitasking. No multitasking. Be in the moment. Absolutely put your focus on what's going on in the conversation. Don't be half in, because if you're half in, you're half out. Don't be half out. No multitasking. Give it the focus that it deserves. That's the first one. The second one is this: think about entering every single conversation that you have thinking that you've got something to learn. If what you do this, then your mind is much more open. You're able to set your opinion to one side because you've entered it thinking, I've got something to learn. You start to listen to understand. And you're likely to be thinking, how can I push back a little bit on this? What is it that I can do to make sure that I do have something to learn here, that I do get something from the conversation? Yeah. So that's a mindset thing. Third thing is this: ask open-ended questions. Now, this is a whole other leadershipization session in itself. I keep threatening to do it, and I really must do one about open-ended questions. These are the questions with who, what, when, where, how, and if you need to use it, why. Ask those open-ended questions. What's really important is that you then let the person respond. Because quite often, especially if we're feeling passionate about something, we ask one question, then another one, then another one, and oh, by the way, and when you've answered that, answer this. One question at a time, and make sure that you allow the person time to respond. Yeah. The fourth one is this: follow the flow of conversation. Now, this comes back to being fully present, being all in, stopping the multitasking. Try not to get caught up in your own thoughts. Try, try to focus so that you can follow the flow of the conversation. Stop listening to your own thoughts and let them go, because we want you here, fully present. Number 5, acknowledge when you don't know something. This is actually really hard for a lot of people to do. You know how you're having a conversation with someone and they say, "Oh, have you read anything about what's going on in Uruguay at the present time?" And often the temptation is for us to go, yeah, I do. You, you don't know anything about it. Say so. It's perfectly all right to say so, because then you can ask curious questions. Then you can pay more attention to what's happening, because you're going to be learning something. So that kind of, brings all those other 5 together, really. So enough said about that one. Number 6, when we have face-to-face conversation, often it's easy to feel as though we're in a competition. So we decide that we want to outdo other people. There's no need to outdo other people. Their dog died. Yours died harder. They achieved this. You achieved more. It's not a competition. So that gentle curiosity, that following the flow of the conversation without feeling like you've got to one up or outdo people all the time. Number 7, don't repeat yourself if possible. Don't repeat yourself if possible. Don't repeat yourself if possible. See how crazy that sounds? Like, it sounds even worse because I'm doing it one after the other. But if what you do is come back all the time and you're repeating what you've already said, and often we feel like that because we want to get our point across, and maybe we're not convinced that the person we're talking to has really understood it. But it gets boring, and it's also very condescending. If you've got a point to make, you might repeat it twice, once a bit further in, but that's it. Don't go on and on and on about that. So don't repeat yourself if possible. The next one is this: dump the tiny details. Often when we're telling a story, we can get caught up in this tiny little stuff over here that we think is really important. It can muddy the water. We don't need the person's names. We don't need the exact dates. Focus in on the information that really matters. Yeah? Focus in on the information that really matters to keep the face-to-face conversation flowing. The next one is this: listen. Now, I know that this sounds really simple. I know that it sounds really simple, but if you're not paying attention, if you're multitasking, if you're not seeing this as an opportunity to learn, if you're not fully engaged in the conversation process, then you're not listening properly. Unfortunately, listening to videos, watching television, on our phone, watching a short reel or a YouTube video, all of those kinds of things have meant that our ability to concentrate is much shorter than it used to be. We get distracted really easily. Try hard to focus on the listening, because no one actually ever listened themselves out of a relationship. No one actually listened themselves out of a job. When you're not talking, you're learning. When you're not talking, you actually have the ability to control where the conversation is going to go, because you're listening and determining what you can do to add to the flow of the conversation. When we're distracted, like we talk at about 200 words a minute, we listen at about 500 words a minute. So there's a huge gap there. What that means is that we can easily get distracted. We can listen much faster than we're being talked at. So focus, 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 focus to understand, listen, focus on the listening, notice what you are noticing when you're listening, and listen to understand rather than feeling like what you've got to do is listen to reply. That's when you unhook yourself from what they're saying and start thinking about how you want to reply. The final one to share with you is this: be interested in the other person or people. Be curious. Figure out what is actually amazing about them. Ask them questions. If you feel like you have to start the conversation by saying, "Hey, this is my name, and tell me a bit about you, or what is it that you do?" Ask them then a deeper question about what is it that they enjoy the most about what they do. And, oh, do you live around here? Yeah. Oh, how do you spend your weekends? What's your favorite thing to do in the weekend? All of those things are starting to build that rapport, and they're demonstrating that you're interested in them. And that will build your face to face communication skills. And you will get much more benefit out of face to face conversations. They're glorious, they're valuable. You need to see them for the value that they will bring. You get clarity much quicker. The person's in front of you, you get to read their response to what they're saying straight away. You're able to change your message to suit the circumstance and to suit the person in a way that you can't in a text message, in an email. So make sure that you see them for the value that they are. Now, I run Say It Smarter. It's a 30-day communication skills program. It's all about improving the way that you communicate. So whether that be with your team or whether that be in other relationships in your life, reach out if you think that I can help you with that. In the meantime, I'd love to see your questions or your comments on the platform that you're watching this on. If you're watching this with as a replay, hashtag replay would be awesome. Reach out to me, and my team and I will make sure that we answer any questions that you bring to us. In the meantime, enjoy your week, and I will see you next week when I'm hoping I will be an awful lot better and more familiar with this brand new keyboard. Bye now.